Hi, I'm Alexis Dubief with Precious Little Sleep, and today we're going to be talking about baby naps, toddler naps too, young people naps. Just call it that blanket statement. I wanted to take a brief second to introduce myself because I'm fairly new to Instagram. I'm like the old lady who's like, what are these young kids up to? And I'm realizing that many people who are following me on Instagram don't actually know who I am. So I am Alexis Dubief. I have been researching sleep for over 10 years, working with parents and trying to figure out how to make it go better for you. I am the author of this book, currently out in its second edition, and I strongly recommend it. Yes, because I wrote it, but also because it's a great resource. And something that became very clear looking at some of the questions that are coming in is that there is a lot of nonsense advice out there related to naps, and it's leading people astray. It's telling parents to worry about the wrong things or things that don't matter. And because sleep is confusing and often not intuitive, these kind of myths and kind of bad information sort of push people into weird directions. And the last thing we need right now is to be pushed into the wrong direction with naps, because naps are kind of tricky to begin with. So just going to take a little step back and start with some basics to make sure that we're all kind of thinking about things through the same lens. Because when you have the right lens to look at your child's naps, it becomes a lot easier to understand what's working and what's not working, so we can kind of figure out a strategy that's going to help us and not waste our time and emotional energy on stuff that's just nonsense, okay? So the first thing is, and this is a theme that comes up in sleep all the time, is independent sleep. Everything starts here. So independent sleep, somebody asked, what does that mean exactly? How do I know if that's what I'm doing or not? Independent sleep is when your child falls asleep in a circumstance that will be persistent throughout the entire duration of their sleep. So anything that changes from the time they fall asleep to the time they wake up is not independent sleep. So the most obvious is if a child falls asleep in my arms and then I ninja creep them into a crib and sneak out of the room, they're going to fall asleep in my arms and wake up in the crib and go, what happened here? What's this about? If they fall asleep nursing, if they fall asleep being rocked, if they fall asleep with a star projector that turns off or a white noise maker that turns off, anything that changes from the time they fall asleep to the time they wake up is going to mean that we're not falling asleep independently. Typically, the biggest issue is parental involvement. I'm present, I'm rocking, I'm nursing, I'm feeding, I'm back rubbing, I'm cuddling, I'm bouncing, and then I sneak them into the crib when they're a limp noodle, completely asleep, and sneak out the door. So that's independent sleep. Other less obvious things that can be causing issues that would be deviating from independent sleep can be pacifiers. And that's a little complicated because I fall asleep with it in my mouth, and then when you start sleeping, your mouth goes slack, and the pacifier pops out. And your baby goes, what happened? Where'd the pacifier go? Because they're babies. And even though it's right there, that's a tough thing to go, oh, that's it. Let me reinsert that. So this is a bridge we must all cross. So falling asleep on your own is tricky, but it's a life skill. It's one that they are absolutely capable of, and it is essential to have longer nap habits. Because what happens is all babies cycle through light sleep anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes, and if they haven't fallen asleep on their own, they're gonna go, where'd mom or dad go? And then now nap is over. And that's how you get stuck into a pattern of 20 to 40 minute naps all day long. And your best friend has a baby taking 2-hour long naps, and you're like, I want those. How do I get those? And you're stuck with these 30-minute naps, and your whole day is spent putting baby to sleep because, you got to take a lot of naps to make it through the day when your naps are only 30 minutes long. So step one is independent sleep. And somebody had asked a great question. At what age is a baby capable of falling asleep on their own? Well, some are capable right out the gate. There are definitely easy unicorn babies who come home from the hospital, boom, falling asleep on their own. Most newborns are not. Most newborns are highly dysregulated. They need an immense amount of soothing and help to fall asleep. So you should be prepared to help a lot for the first few months. However, by 2 to 3 months, they are capable, but we get trapped into helping them because it's what works. And newborns are a lot of work and we're tired. So we just kind of do what works, and then that pattern continues for months and months and months. and we're stuck with these short naps because we are rocking, nursing, feeding to sleep, sneaking them to the crib. 30 minutes go by, they wake up, you're not there, nap is over, right? So this is the cycle that we get stuck with. So the question as to when is really pretty young, as soon as you feel ready. So developmentally, most babies are really dysregulated for the first 6 weeks. So studies show that babies cry the most and sleep the least for the first 6 weeks. So we consider this a newborn gauntlet. Like, you can't fix this. This is just something you make your way through as safely and as quickly as possible. And then things start to improve after 6 weeks. So typically the first 6 weeks are pretty rocky, but 2 to 3 months is a great time to start looking at how are we really helping our child learn to fall asleep without all the bells and whistles of mom and dad really, really being actively involved. The second issue is timing. When are we trying to nap? And people complain that they feel like they're threading a needle, because you are threading a needle. Because here's the way sleep works. Our sleep drive during the day accumulates by being awake and then diminishes by being asleep. So all day long, you're like awake, more tired. It's nap time. And then we sleep and our sleep drive goes away. And this is just biology. We know this is how it works. So if we try to ask a baby or an infant or a toddler to fall asleep before they have sufficient sleep drive, they won't be that tired and they'll struggle to fall asleep. If we keep them up too long, they'll become overtired, and our body's response to being overtired is to produce excess cortisol, which is a stimulant. So it's like having a cup of espresso, and now it's hard to fall asleep. So you are threading the needle between these two things all day long. For younger babies, the gap between undertired and overtired is tiny, and it sucks. So at 2 to 3 months, miss this little nap window by 20 minutes, and you've got a problem. And it's really, really painful and challenging. As they get older, you get to be more flexible, and you have that nap window, that little thread of the needle that we're trying to aim for gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So we have more flexibility. So if the day is off a little bit and we don't quite hit it right just perfectly, we still have a decent shot of having a decent nap. So it gets easier with age. If you're parenting a baby who is 0 to 3 months, you have my sympathy. It is a hard time. And you are threading a tiny little gap in this needle, and it's hard. But timing matters, and the amount matters. So all of us humans have a normal set point for sleep of how much we can get. And if we sleep too much, we're gonna have gaps form, we're gonna struggle to fall asleep. You can only sleep so much in a day. And if you sleep too little, you'll be overtired and cranky. And the problem with a lot of approaches to sleep is they're trying to force everybody into a certain schedule. Like, this is the answer for when your child should sleep and how much they should sleep. And I get it. That is very appealing. You're sleep deprived and exhausted, and just being told what to do is really comforting. And I understand that. However, the challenge is it ignores the biology of people, which tells us that there is a wide range of normal. And that some babies are here and some babies are here. And if we're constantly trying to shoehorn babies into a fixed schedule, we're going to have a lot of babies struggling, not because they're bad sleepers, not because their parents are doing the wrong thing, but because the schedule that they're being shoehorned into is not right for their biology. So some kids are big nappers, some kids are small nappers, some kids have longer nights, some kids have shorter nights. Our job as parents is to kind of figure out, where does our child fit and where are they most successful? So can you sleep too much during the day? Yes. Is this common? No. I rarely suggest people wake up their babies from all naps. So if we're waking them up at all naps, I might consider some options. But some babies are just heavy sleepers during the day, and they have to be woken up from naps. Otherwise, they will be undertired and then wake up all night. So it's a little bit complicated. Most babies, let's say around 6 months, do their best sleeping on average 3 hours a day at nap time, right? So you might have 3 short naps, 2 medium-sized naps, 1 short nap, 1 super long nap, but typically it's around 3 hours. But again, there's a range of normal. Younger babies who are taking shorter naps might take a lot of naps, so that each individual nap may not be very long, but when you're taking 5 naps, at 45 minutes a nap, that adds up. So cumulatively, they're actually napping quite a bit. It's just spread out a lot and kind of inconvenient. The last thing I wanted to say is consistency. And this is like, I keep coming back to this and it's super not fun to talk about. But the reality is if we fall asleep at nap time the same way every day, it teaches us that this is how we sleep and we get better at it, right? We get better over time when we do things. If we nap in 500 different ways, stroller, baby wearing, crib, car, floor mat, like all over the place, it's harder to figure out how to fall asleep because we're not really learning. We're not practicing one way. We're sort of doing it all over the place. And that makes it really hard for babies. Now, some babies can do that and be successful, but if you're struggling with naps and you want to set your kiddo up for success, and you do, like we know you do, the best way to go about it is to have them napping in the same place most of the time. And ideally, that's the crib. That's it. Now, some people say, well, I can never leave the house because of nap and we're house trapped. Totally, 100%, it sucks. So yes, you can have some on-the-go naps so that you can get out of the house. So like if an afternoon stroller walk helps you keep your sanity and your child falls asleep in the stroller, go for it. If the first few naps of the day happen in the crib and the last nap happens on the go so that you can get some fresh air, great. If all naps happen in the day are like a big mystery as to where and when they're gonna happen, we need to dial that in a little bit. So we're trying to find a balance, but consistency is your friend. I know it's not fun. All right, so with that as our kind of basis, let's look at some questions. Got some great questions. Thank you for everybody who sent them in. What is the earliest parents can start drowsy but awake? Well, for some babies, birth. The minute you give birth, you can start drowsy but awake. For some of us who have more intense kids, that is an impossibility, which is why I think 2 to 3 months is a great time. And the reason I say that is that even though life is not easy at 2 to 3 months, we're digging a groove. So the more we do things one way, the bigger that groove becomes. We're getting deeper and deeper and deeper into that groove. And what you don't want to do is nurse a child to sleep until they're 9 months old and then go, oh no, now we have a problem on our hands. So, can we fix things at 9 months? Of course we can. But if we're looking to make gradual changes and we're looking to set a child up for success from an early age with minimal tears and drama, 2 to 3 months is a great time to start kind of chipping away at that. And again, the book outlines lots of different approaches that are going to be really, really effective at 2 to 3 months, but less effective, if not effective at all, at 9 months. So you have a lot more options and a lot more tools in your toolbox when we start earlier, and a lot fewer tools and a lot skinnier toolbox when we wait until they're rounding the corner to toddlerhood. Talk us through nap transitions. Always a messy thing, right? Nobody likes dropping a nap. How do we know when they are ready to drop a nap, and what is the best way to transition? She's talking about her 4-month-old who's going from 4 naps to 3 naps. So what happens for all human beings is we sleep the most of our entire life when we're born, and we are decreasing our sleep needs for the first year of life. So we're tracking on a pretty substantial downhill slope. And as parents, we're always trying to figure out like, okay, well, we had something kind of working and then 2 weeks went by and now it's not working. So you're constantly bobbing and weaving when it comes to figuring out how much sleep your child needs. As part of this, what happens is as newborns, you might take 5 naps a day and then you drop to 4 and then 3 and then 2. And then between 12 to 18 months, most kids drop to 1, and you sort of stick around with 1 nap until 3 to 5 years, right? So we're trending downward on this slope pretty significantly for the first year, and then it levels out a bit until, you're 3 to 5 years old, you stop napping entirely, and then you're done napping until you have your own kids, and we go back to napping again, right? So what happens is, as your sleep needs to decrease, the amount of time you need to be awake to accumulate sufficient sleep drive increases. So the signs that your need for sleep drive has increased to the point that you don't need that 4th nap anymore is a couple of fold. One is that 4th nap just won't happen, right? You hit the wall where you're like, oh, it doesn't matter what we do, she is not taking that 4th nap. We've tried feeding, cuddling, car rides, stroller rides, baby wearing, no way, that 4th nap will not happen. So that answers your question pretty definitively. The other is that the amount of time your child needs to be awake between naps increases so much throughout the day that there's just not enough time for that 4th nap, right? Like if bedtime's 7 o'clock and it's, she's waking up from the last nap of the day around 4:30. There's just not enough time. There's no room. There's no time in the day for that fourth nap. So that's another cue that it's time to go. So it stops happening. It's really painfully hard to come by, and there's just not enough hours in the day. Okay, another great question. Is there a max nap length? Currently, capping her 16-month-old at 2 hours. Should I drop this to 1.5? So this gets back to the range of biological norms, wide range. There are 16-month-olds who take 3-hour naps. There are 16-month-olds who still take 2 naps. There are 16-month-olds who take a 1-hour nap. So the answer is, if she's sleeping well at night, basically here's the thing. If your child falls asleep and stays asleep successfully for naps and bedtime, then the amount of sleep they're getting is great. So if those things are true with a 2-hour nap, enjoy that 2-hour nap. If those things are not true and all of your other sleep hygiene is 100% on point, then maybe you would need to consider shortening it. But again, that's less common than you think. So my gut instinct is to say don't cap naps unless there is clear evidence that it's a problem. My baby cries whenever we put her into the sleep sack. Great. Your baby is smart and is learning things. This is anticipatory crying. So here's the reality. All kids have fear of missing out. No kid wants to leave the party. Not your 3-month-old, not your 3-year-old. The party is happening, and nap means leaving the party. But being smart enough and aware enough to know that the party is still continuing, only you're not part of it. Nobody likes this. So asking a child to be thrilled about leaving the party is unrealistic. They're never going to be thrilled to leave the party. The only way they'd be thrilled to leave the party is if the party was terrible. And you don't want your house party to be terrible. You want your kid to be bummed to leave your awesome party. That means that you have a deeply connected relationship, you are awesome, you are super fun, and they want to hang out with you all the time. And that's lovely. But so is meeting their child's basic needs for sleep, right? Which is a fundamental need. We need air, food, water, sleep, right? Fundamental. So your child has wised up to you. So anticipatory crying just means that as your kids get older, their brains are getting smarter. And now she realizes, oh no, sleep sack means party time's over. No. That's what that means. It's not a bad thing. It means she's deeply connected to you, you're tons of fun, and she's getting smarter. That's what that means. Okay. This is a great question. How many attempts at a nap before you call it a fail? Some days naps suck, right? Not every day is going to be a great nap day. Personally, I think 20 minutes is a good guidepost. If I have spent 20 minutes feeding, nursing, rocking, shushing, patting, blah, 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 and nothing is happening, assuming this is a child who does not fall asleep on their own, I might go to an emergency backup plan. My emergency backup plan back in the day, and boy, am I glad these days are over, was the stroller walk, right? That was my emergency ripcord. Oh, nap's not happening, into the stroller. Now, of course, the stroller walks were not great for me because then I didn't get to nap or eat lunch or do whatever I was going to do. But that was my, okay, desperate, let's go. Once a child is falling asleep on their own, it's a different issue. If your child is routinely struggling to fall asleep for more than 20 minutes at nap time, and they have been reliably falling asleep independently for a while, at least a week or two, that might be a sign that the schedule's off. Remember, we're tracking downward on sleep needs the entire first year of life, so we're constantly aiming for a moving target, and it's challenging, it's tricky, it's not fun. So if they're falling asleep independently, I would give them more time, but I would also look at the pattern and go, is this something that's happening routinely, and am I aiming at the wrong time? Is it too soon, and their sleep drive hasn't had enough time to fully inflate, if you will? Okay, Alexis, I have just moved my 6-month-old into her own room, and I'm trying to perfect the daytime sleeping routine. I tend to put her down drowsy and let her fuss to sleep. Occasionally she's still hungry and I end up feeding her and she wants to nurse from both sides and falls asleep nursing. That happens. So this gets back to the consistency point. So she's mastered the art of falling asleep on her own, but sometimes the feeding schedule doesn't work out and she's kind of peckish and so we nurse to sleep. So I wouldn't beat yourself up if that happens occasionally, but I would look at how often it's happening. and think, okay, is this like a once a week thing? Life happens. Is this a once a day thing? We might have a problem. If we nurse to sleep sometimes, remember, when we do things different ways, we're giving our kids mixed messages. And it's hard for them to understand how the world works if we're giving them different messages. So if I was once a day, my kiddo was falling asleep by nursing, and my goal is independent sleep, which it should be, that is a concern. So that means I need to mix up my feeding schedule so that she's not peckish right at nap time. So I need to feed her maybe 30 minutes before so that she's not hungry at nap time and can continue to fall asleep on her own. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but there we go. Oh, this is a classic question. This applies to, 100% of parents of newborn babies. My 3-month-old will sleep for 45 minutes in her crib, but longer stretches in my arms. She's an amazing sleeper at night. She sleeps until 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Lucky you. Should I wake her up earlier to have better naps, or be grateful for the good night, or just hold her? So listen, being held by a parent is the greatest thing in the world. All babies will sleep longer if held than they will in a crib, because the crib is a wonderful, safe space for a newborn. But it's not nearly as cuddly, cozy, wonderful, drowsy, loving as being held by a parent. The problem is that being held by a parent is often unsustainable. I mean, people need to do things, right? And if we're holding our children 24 hours a day, nothing gets done. We need to eat, use the bathroom, do work. We have things to do as well. The other challenge is holding a child while they sleep is delightful and perfectly fine as long as you are awake. But we fall asleep when we are constantly sleep exhausted and holding infants for naps. And we often end up falling asleep on adult sitting surfaces like couches and chairs. And this is an enormously unsafe situation. And sadly, many, many infants are lost each year this way. So holding an infant while they sleep, while you're awake, delightful and wonderful. Napping or falling asleep, even unintentionally, while holding an infant in an adult sleep space or sitting space is enormously dangerous. And this is the conundrum, right? Staying awake when we're exhausted, we have a cuddly little infant in our arms, really hard to do. So ideally, our children are sleeping in their own spaces at all times or most of the time. So to me, the safety issue, the consistency, the independent sleep factor, all make her sleeping in the crib the best option, even if that means that the nap is short. And at 45 minutes, that's not honestly horrifically short. That's okay. So I would lean towards those crib naps for most sleep of the day. If you want to cuddle her sometimes, of course, she's your child and you should, and that's wonderful, but you have to remain awake. And that can be tricky. So the other question that's here is, okay, she has this wonderful night at 3 months. Great, that is fantastic, good for you. So she's saying because she has this super long night, is that leading to her having shorter naps? Possibly, right? Because we only get so much sleep a day. Your sleep bucket is only so big. So if you use up 80% of your bucket at night, then 20% is left for naps, which is how it should be, right? We should be sleeping most of our sleep at night. So the question is, would she be taking longer naps if we cut her sleep back at night? And the answer is possibly. You could try. Would I encourage it? No. Most 3-month-olds take 45-minute naps anyway. So I would hate to see you give up a gloriously long night trying to chase a big nap. I would just keep the gloriously long night personally. But maybe you need longer naps. A lot of us are working from home. A lot of us don't have childcare, and that may not be a luxury that you can afford. If so, you could consider cutting back some night's sleep and seeing if that would help coax longer naps. I will say at 3 months, we've talked about this, right? She needs to fall asleep on her own. So step 1 is make sure she's falling asleep on her own. Step 2 would be maybe if we cut back on night sleep, it would help her nap more during the day. Sleeping till 8 a.m. though is glorious. So I would enjoy that, but okay. So this is a great question. Should I wait it out for my 11-month-old to start consolidating naps? She falls asleep independently. So babies take short naps and it's a developmental issue. So even if you're falling asleep on your own at nap time, for younger babies, you may still have short naps. So independent sleep is essential for longer naps, but it does not guarantee you longer naps. And I know that is frustrating and unfair, but that's the truth. That's the way babies are. So the question is, when should we expect long naps from a baby who is falling asleep independently? Some will do it very, very young. Some will be doing it by 2-3 months. You will teach a baby to fall asleep on their own at 2 to 3 months, and they will take 1.5 hour long naps, and it is fantastic. Some parents will foster independent sleep at 2 to 3 months and still have 45-minute naps and say, Alexis, you are a liar. You told me I'd have great naps, and I don't have great naps, and I hate you. Well, please don't hate me. That is just baby's development. It takes time. The sleep drive at nap time is low. Sleep drive at bedtime is big. So with a low sleep drive, which is just naturally during the day, much lower than it is at night, you have to cycle through light sleep and fall back asleep, and that's a hard thing to do. So independent sleep is essential, but it's not a guarantee. When is it a guarantee? Typically by 6 to 9 months. So even if you're stuck with 45-minute naps, typically somewhere around that zone, even at the outside, you would start to see long, more consistent, predictable naps happen. So if that is not happening by 11 months, something is up. Now, I don't know what, because that was the only question. There was no other details, but something is up. What could it be? It could be a schedule issue. It could be a lingering sleep association. It could be environmental. If we've got bright lights going on, if we're still sleeping in the living room, too much noise, but something is up. So yes, I think I would be looking around to troubleshoot why we are stuck with short naps at 11 months. I recently switched my 13-month-old to 1 nap, which again, kids drop to 1 nap between 12 to 18 months. So fine, great. And he is often waking up after about an hour, but will almost always fall back asleep if I give him some time to kind of figure it out. Can I expect this to get better? I hate hearing him cry. So again, I don't have any context here. So questions I would ask is, well, how long does it take him to fall back asleep, right? So he cycles through light sleep at 60 minutes and he yells at you a little bit and then falls back asleep. Okay, not a problem. He's allowed to yell at you. Remember, he's missing out in the party. He knows you're out there. He knows you're out there eating ice cream and watching TV, and he's missing out in his bedroom. So he's going to yell at you, and he's like, hey! If it's brief, fine, right? It's normal to vocalize. You cycle through light sleep. That basically means you're slightly awake for 3 to 5 minutes. So if your baby kind of grumbles at you for 3 to 5 minutes and then sleeps for another hour, great. If it's much longer than, say, 10 minutes, I might wonder about what's going on. So then we come back to schedule issue. Are we trying for nap too early and he's not tired enough? Lingering sleep associations. Is he completely falling asleep on his own? By 13 months old, drowsy but awake is done. Drowsy but awake is a trap. Let me just say this again. Drowsy but awake is a trap. We've been told that the goal is drowsy but awake. No, that is a trap. So that's a whole nother subject, but again, there are a lot of things that could lead to your child struggling to cycle through light sleep. So if it's brief, I wouldn't worry about it. If it's longer, I would troubleshoot some options. And again, there is a handy dandy resource that would help you do that. If you have the book and you haven't already, also you can join the free Facebook group, which is super helpful. Okay, couple more questions. I have a 2-year-old. Today is his birthday. Happy birthday. And he's been fighting his nap for a while now. The last few months, he's probably had a nap on average 4 days of the week, so maybe every other day. The other days, he just plays around and talks to himself in the crib. We just moved into a new room a couple of weeks ago. I would love to hear your advice. Do you think he's ready to transition to no nap? He is a great independent sleeper and hasn't had any trouble with night sleep. He sleeps 7 to 7:30 a.m. And I would say that on the days he doesn't nap, he's fine until bedtime. Sometimes he's a bit fussier than usual. So, happy birthday, buddy. You are sleeping 12 to 12 and a half hours at night. That is a lot of sleep. That is a lot of sleep. Most kids are only sleeping 10 and a half or 11 at night. So, kids that have long, glorious nights tend to drop naps sooner than kids that have shorter nights. Is it possible that he's dropping nap? It is. Would I change anything? No. I think you're doing beautifully. I would not cut back on night sleep in order to chase that nap because 12 and a half hours, again, glorious. I think you're handling things perfectly. I would call it rest time. He's old enough to know your words. And I'd say, hey, buddy, we're going to have rest time. And, let him take a few board books or whatever. Like, he can have a few small, safe toys in the crib. If he doesn't sleep, he doesn't. And then when rest time is over, we go about our day. If he sleeps, great. And it sounds like he's kind of doing every other day, which, kind of tends to be one of the ways kids drop naps, where, it starts to become a little less frequent until it just stops happening. And this is how you segue to quiet time. So we just call it rest time. Hey, buddy, it's time to rest your body. I'm going to go rest my body, and we get an hour, and that's it. And a toddler night light or a hatch can be helpful because it gives them a cue so they know, like, when is this over, right? And I think an hour, when we transition from nap time to quiet time, honestly, I think an hour is reasonable. I know people desperately want a break, and they are asking their kids to entertain themselves in a dark, boring room for 90 minutes or 2 hours. And if that works for you, that's fine, but that's a lot to ask of a 2-year-old. I mean, how long would you want to hang out in a dark room with nothing to do, right? So, I think an hour for quiet time is fine. And then you give them a couple of board books, maybe a puzzle, nothing that's a choking hazard, nothing that lights up or makes noise. And we say, hey, buddy, it's time to rest, and I'll see you when the light turns green. When should I start having an immovable bedtime? Trying to get 5-month-olds to sleep independently. That is not an app question, but I'll answer anyway. Thrifty Learning asks. So we want to have a consistent bedtime as soon as humanly possible, which for most kids happens around 3 months. So if we don't have a consistent bedtime by 5 months, we need to make it happen. We need to dial that in. And consistent can vacillate a little bit. There can be a tiny swing, it doesn't have to be like rock solid, but ideally within 15 minutes either way, bedtime should be a known quantity by 5 months. And the reason is that's how the circadian rhythm works. It thrives on regularity and consistency. So while naps can move based on how long you've been awake, bedtime kind of needs to be a lock if you're looking to successfully establish, healthy sleep habits at night. Okay. Another big kid question. My 3-year-old, 3.5 years to be exact, has always been an early nap dropper. And for the past 2 months, we've dropped naps and we did quiet time. She would not fall asleep. But there were days when she would fall asleep at daycare and then wouldn't go to bed until 9 p.m. Just upstairs yelling at us. Bedtime is 7:30. She does still wake up at night, like a lot, 4 to 5 nights a week, and sometimes goes right back to sleep, and other times rebels. And my husband and I go check on her. And I think it's behavior-based, not sleep deprivation. It's hard to tell. Pardon me, somebody calling my phone. Who does that? Text me. Sorry. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. So a lot of kids who are dropping nap get into this situation where sometimes they nap and sometimes they don't nap. If they nap, then bedtime is really late. So if they're napping at daycare but not at home, then on daycare day, bedtime is 9 o'clock. And that sucks. Nobody wants to hear that. But if they're napping at daycare, it's not fair to ask anyone to go to bed an hour and a half before they're ready to sleep. It's just not fair. It's not fair to ask us to do that. So as a general guidepost, just consider, don't ask your kids to do something you wouldn't happily do. I would not happily lie in bed with nothing to do for an hour and a half. I wouldn't make it 15 minutes before I'm grabbing the Kindle, right? There's no way I'm going to sit there for an hour and a half staring at the ceiling. At least, I'm going to start yelling about it too, right? So just like your child is, yeah, so would I. So does that mean they have to go to bed at 9 on daycare days? Yes. If they're going to nap at daycare, then on daycare day, bedtime is 9 o'clock and the rest of the time it's 7:30. But Alexis, you said bedtime should be the same time every day. Yes, it should. But sometimes circumstances conspire against us. And a lot of daycares put kids down for naps far past the age when they still need to nap, which creates that conundrum. So 9 o'clock bedtime on daycare days, 7:30 bedtime on home days. It sucks, and I know, but that's where you're at. Hopefully it's temporary, and then she'll stop napping entirely and can go to bed at 7:30 all the time. So she wakes up 4 to 5 times at night, goes right back to sleep or yells at us. It's hard to tell. So this very much sounds like a sleep association issue, right? So again, I don't know what's happening at bedtime, but I can't stress this enough. All good sleep, and your child deserves good sleep and you deserve good sleep, starts by falling asleep on your own at bedtime. So if we stay until they're asleep, if we climb into their bed and creep out when they're completely asleep, if we tell them we're coming back in and then don't, all of these things for bigger kids cause issues, right? Like if we tell a 3-year-old, oh, I'm gonna go potty. I'll come back and check on you though. Their expectation is they're gonna wake up later in the night and find you there. So anytime a kid's waking up 4 to 5 times at night, I'm wondering about sleep associations and sleep hygiene. A 3.5-month-old should be sleeping solidly. So something in the way that we're handling sleep is making it hard for her to do so. And I would pick at that and get curious and try to figure out what that is all about. Okay, one last question here. Hunter asks, how do you handle early morning wakes when there's a schedule? We try to do wake at 7, nap at 9, but she'll wake at 6. So I don't know what this schedule thing means. So let me back up a little. I know what schedules mean. But so this is part of the nonsense we talked about. People have been told that your child must nap at the same time every day. There is no medical evidence to support this. None. What we know about day sleep is that day sleep is primarily driven by sleep drive, and sleep drive happens because of wake time. Bedtime is more complicated, so consistent time at bedtime makes sense. Nap sleep does not have that same biological function, so it's primarily driven by sleep drive, and sleep drive works by how long you've been awake. And remember, we're trying to thread a needle where we don't want to be overtired or undertired. So if our morning wake up varies by as much as an hour, and we're trying to have naps happen at the same time every day, that means that the amount of time that we're awake between the nap, morning wake up and the first nap of the day is going to swing by an hour. And depending on the age of a child, an hour is a really long time. We're trying to thread the needle of between overtired and undertired. An hour swing is going to make that really, really hard. So let's take, for example, a 6-month-old. Most 6-month-olds need to be awake about 2 hours before their first nap of the day. If we swing that to 3 hours, we're going to have a kid who's typically pretty tired. And even if they don't show signs of fatigue, because some kids are really easygoing and they don't let us know that they're tired, if we did a cortisol test, we would find that they're actually kind of stressed out because they're too tired. So my question is, why are we chasing a consistent schedule? Typically, we're chasing it because somebody told us that it's essential. And I'm telling you it's not. And I'm right. Listen to me. The other reason why we chase a schedule is it kind of makes our day plan a little easier, because now we just sort of have a fixed thing that we're doing instead of trying to do this math all day long. And I get that. Like, people don't like math. But until your child is old enough to have a more consistent sleep pattern, you kind of need to do some nap math. Now, I will say very few kids reliably will sleep until 7. I mean, if yours does, God bless you. I am jealous. I would love to have a child who sleeps till 7. But if they're sleeping anywhere between 6 to 7, I would say pick an earlier time and wake them up at that time. That's how you get a consistent schedule. So if we say, well, sometimes they sleep till 7, but most of the time they're up between 6 or 7, then split the difference and say, we're going to wake this child up at 6:30 every day. If they wake up at 6, fine. If they're asleep at 6:30, we wake them up. And now we have kind of a consistent smallish band of our morning wake time is between 6 and 6:30. That enables us to start moving towards a by the top clock schedule because we don't have such a big swing. So we could just put a stake in the ground and say, nap number 1 is at 8:30, and sometimes they'll be awake a little bit longer and sometimes a little bit shorter, but roughly speaking, we're on target for a by the clock nap number 1 at 8:30. Hope that helps. So just to recap, couple things to think about. Everything starts with falling asleep on your own. So if you're struggling with naps at any age, that's where we're going to start. We're going to start focusing on that, because that more than anything else is going to help you set your child up for success. We also need to look at timing. When matters. How long does your child individually need to be awake so they can successfully fall asleep? So unhook a little bit from the idea that it has to be at the same time every day, because naps don't. Bedtime does, naps don't. So be a little curious, experiment a little bit. What happens if I wait a little? Maybe it's too soon. So, an undertired child is going to struggle to fall asleep. An overtired child is going to struggle to fall asleep. So we're threading the needle, and that sucks, but that's how we make naps happen. And the right amount, too much, too little. If you are one of these people whose child takes monster mega naps and you have to wake them up, we are all jealous of you. And consistency. So again, 80% of the naps should be happening in their bed on their own, and if a couple times during the day or the week you guys need to get some fresh air and go for a car ride, great, go for it. But just most of the naps should be happening in their crib. Okay, great. Thank you so much for these questions, and thank you so much for joining me as I figure out Instagram. Have a great day.